which is shooting at us, because we believe that's in the middle of Port Stanley, which is out of bounds as far as our gunners are concerned. So we've got a very tense afternoon while we stay here and wait to move off under cover of darkness. The battle made an eerie sight. The British progress marked only by the lines of tracer. Again, the resistance was tougher, the battle longer than expected. At dawn on Monday, the Scots Guards were still trying to fight their way to the top of Mount Tumbledown.
Loud, correct! Very, 1, 3, 6, 8, now, 15, now, set, ready! Fire up!
On the Argentine positions, the artillery was falling like rain, drenching the mountains in debris and smoke. Once the Scots Guards had battled their way to the top of Tumbledown, the Gurkhas prepared to move through onto Sapper Hill, the last ridge, almost on the outskirts of Stanley itself. The helicopters, snuggling against the contours of the land, couldn't keep the ammunition coming fast enough. The final bombardment brought the guns down to their last half-dozen shells. There was a naval bombardment too, but the task force had suffered such heavy damage that the ships couldn't provide the gunfire support that had been planned. But short of ammunition or not, the British shells kept falling remorselessly until the Argentine line broke. An Argentine cameraman showed what it looked like on the receiving end. The demoralized defenders were pulling back into the town. Officers and men were arguing. Discipline was breaking down. The British tactics were paying off. The appalling bombardment had been going on for weeks. The blockade, even partially enforced, had created a sense of isolation. The weather was turning nasty. There was nowhere else to retreat. The British were worried they might have to fight through the streets. Had the Argentines known that the British were on their last legs logistically, with the Navy almost unable to guarantee the supply line any longer. Perhaps they would have fought on. Instead, suddenly it was all over. The guns fell silent.
You're reminded that at the moment we still remain at war.
We're still at war with Argentina. And we'll still have cap. Normal anti-air precautions. 8-2, roger, out. Negotiations will start tonight. Although there appears to be a ceasefire at the moment and the Argentinian forces in the Falklands have appeared to have surrendered, this does not necessarily mean that the forces in the mainland Argentine will necessarily stop fighting. Therefore, we will have normal cap, that is air cover, combat air patrols, and we should take the normal precautions against being caught by surprise or whatever. There is a white flag flying over Stanley. Very marvellous. Ciò hajasle, Marti Jansa Kosan Foko objectivement, Wa Fugera,
Now their major had to explain to some rather disappointed Gurkhas that their chance for fighting and regimental glory was over. The troops began the dangerous march into Stanley, weaving their way through the minefields which surrounded it. They followed carefully in the tracks of the engineers, the men who'd led every assault, showing the advanced troops the way through the minefields under fire. With the ceasefire still shaky, the order was given, advance, but fire only if fired upon.
No more open fire. No more open fire. No more open fire. We beat them. The make safe, weapons. Next safe. We're going to use it now. He's not got one at the stroke leg, have you? No. Index.
Two emotions competed, elation that it was all over, and a sense of being drained, almost deprived of purpose. So helter-skelter had been the final move forward that his troops were almost at Moody Brook, the Royal Marine Barracks on the outskirts of Port Stanley, before Brigadier Thompson of the Commander Brigade caught up with them.
I didn't think it would happen quite as fast as this. I expected this to be happening tomorrow and not today. But I'm delighted that it's happened today.
The real enemy defeated, there was time for some regimental rivalry.
They're on the race course. Hey, who's got up the battalion flag up on here, Jay? Who was the first to put up the flag? Tupara! I put it up again. Tupara the first in again? That's right, yes, again. Tupara was first in. How far did you beat the others? 2.5 hours. So how long have you been here now? Since about 3 o'clock. 2 on 2, 3 o'clock.
What sort of opposition was there?
Running opposition.
Running.
They ran away.
So you just came straight in, right? And told to stop.
That's right.
How did
We
you-
went into the town, put up the two-barrel flag, the Union Jack, and then was dragged back out by the Marines.
Not feeling too good about that. What do you expect?
Argentine officers were allowed to keep sidearms to emphasize their authority, perhaps even to ensure their safety against their men. That Monday evening, June the 14th, General Moore helicoptered through a snowstorm to negotiate the Argentine surrender. Not just in Port Stanley, he insisted, but everywhere on the islands. The surrender was unconditional in everything but name, because when the agreement was drawn up, General Menendez would not have the word unconditional in the final document. Stanley, several thousands more around the islands, had nowhere to live, little food to eat. The British wanted to ship them home, but until someone was willing to accept defeat and guarantee a safe conduct, they had to stay on the islands. The prisoners were taken out to the squalor of the airfield and left amid the mud and debris to fend for themselves. They had only a few days' rations when they surrendered, just jerry-built shelter. There weren't even tents for the British. Suddenly, the danger of men dying needlessly through